In the distinction between a true and false emergency, the true emergency has connected with it action in the moment. And also you'll notice that generally speaking in true emergency states, there's no distressing feeling. In fact, you feel a state of dynamic balance. You feel a state of neutralization, as though all of those conflicts and difficulties seem to have evaporated. And it's just a honing in and a focus in the moment, nothing more. And there's no elaboration, there's no story, there's just that. And there's oddly, a certain sense of peace that comes with that. And then you act according to that, because you are girding yourself with the truth of the matter. You're telling yourself, you're seeing and observing and perceiving for yourself the truth of the matter now. This is an actual emergency state. That's all you need to know. You'll be given what to do. You'll be given what to do. Milton Erickson, who is the father of paradoxical thinking, he was a psychiatrist. He was on rounds. He left the hospital on his way to a car in the parking lot. Guy came up to him, put a gun in his chest, and said, "Your money or your life?" Erickson looked at his watch and said, "It's 2:45. The guy was so nonplussed that of course, Erickson gave him a paradoxical response. It was a non-emergent response. Was that a true emergency? You could reason that it was a true emergency. The guy had a gun in his chest, he's got to blow his heart out, right? He said it's 2:45, and he walked away. And the guy was so nonplussed, he didn't know what to do. But the thief lost his moment for what he intended to do, because once he loses the moment, he can't recapture that. And now Erickson's on the alert, you see. So was it a true emergency? So it's hard to really pin down what a true emergency is, even in those situations. We'll give it to you, though. I'll give it to you. You're tiger planing off the road, guy has a gun to the chest. Even Daniel Pearl, who had the gun to his head and they were going to decapitate him, smiled. And the Hasidim, during the Holocaust, danced and sang into the ovens as they were being let in. Was that a true emergency for them? No. In the sense of they treated it as what it is. No stories. No stories. We get to that in the yes or no, but in the emergency state, in the false emergency, all kinds of stories are elaborated. And we get out of the moment by making up all kinds of layers about if then, and what could happen, and what the possibilities are for us, and so on. And we get zoomed into the future, right? When there's a distressing response of any sort, false emergency. And in the on-off indicator, if it's a neutralized response, if it's a response geared in the moment in which all these feelings don't exist, because all of the feelings, anxiety, worry, fear, panic, guilt, they're all out of the moment. They're either in the past or in the future. And we are then shackled and caught in the web of time. And death is a statement of time. If we extract ourselves out of the web of time, we extract ourselves out of the web of death, we're dealing in no time. And in no time, no emergency. As Woody Allen said, one of his stand-up routines, he was before a firing squad, and he saw his life passing by, and he recounted everything, and then he realized it was somebody else's life, and he felt much better about it. You know what I mean? So, actually, you could say you live every moment of your life as though it's a true emergency. And that has currency in that, in the tradition of the West, I know, because I'm not conversant with this in other traditions that may exist, you're to live every moment as though it's your last. So you don't know what the next moment is bringing. So this is a true emergency, and if it's treated like that, you're relating to it as something that's peaceful, focused, neutral, balanced. There's nothing to be concerned about. There are no conflicts. That's what the people describe when they go into near-death experiences. They come back from it, the ones who've seen the light, and they come back to it, this life, and they say it's peaceful, balanced, beautiful white light, no conflicts, no distressing emotions, no disturbances. Everything is gone. And in that moment of isness, everything is gone. There is nothing at all that is compelling or disturbing about that moment. And that happens to happen in true emergencies. So you live every moment as though it is, if you like to, as a true emergency, it's your life. Because in that moment, if it is your last moment, you'll do everything that you had meant to do in your life, or wanted to do, or felt that you had not done. Everything will come to a head in that moment. Everything you ever felt, and I've seen that over these many years, over 33 years of work, that people who incur that false condition created by the medical profession called cancer, because it doesn't exist, you know that everything is a decaying. We just said everything is decay. They name the decays by many different ways to gain power over you. So if they label you, because you know what you label, you take charge of. You're in charge of what you call. And the person whom you call that then surrenders their power to you. That's how it works in the medical profession. In that condition, many people have undertaken to do the very things in their life that for years they've wanted to do and were not willing to do. But when they knew that from that condition, which is tantamount by being told that they have this condition called cancer, they're going to die. Since I'm going to die, now I'll do everything. Before I die, I'll get it all done. Everything I was looking to do. And everything gets focused, using your logic. The true emergency shows you what's correct to do in that moment. And the false emergencies mislead you and take you down a path that's going to incur more emergencies because you'll misjudge. And when you misjudge, something happens that's not so favorable to you. You say, that incurs another emergency state. And now you feel that you're in another emergency, which is a false emergency. So disemergency, in effect, is true emergency, but in its favorable sense, in its beneficent sense. In the wisdom literature, there are at least two people who have not died. At least two. There's a number of issues that are alleged. But Enoch doesn't die. And the prophet Elijah doesn't die. It's said so in the wisdom literature, that they both are living eternally. They never die. There are many cases, as we mentioned, of resurrection. There are at least 8. Jesus being amongst one of them, being as one of them. Lazarus being somewhat along those lines of coming back from the dead. There are 6 or 8 even in prior to them in the monotheistic literature of coming back to life from the dead. We saw in Jerusalem, I met an herbalist who was the leading herbalist in the country. She had traveled all over the world to find remedies. And she brought back from India pictures of 2 men who are reputed to be 500 years old. She showed us those pictures. And how do we know that they're truly that age? She said, and we asked her that, how do you know that it's truly the case? And she said, the only way I know that is this. The people in the village told me that they know these 2 men. Their parents knew the 2 men. Their grandparents knew the 2 men. Their great-grandparents knew the 2 men. They could go as far back as that. So they're going back 30, 60, 90, 100 years, 120 years, and they all knew these men. And then they alleged that from then, the prevailing understanding in the village is that these men were around in 1500, and that it was been passed down through the families that these men existed and lived there, and they knew them. And the families told their progeny, who told their progeny, and it got to the great-grandparents, the grandparents, and so on. So we saw pictures of these men. Parenthetically, we asked them, how did they, what did they take? What did they do? They did it by taking a concoction made up of mercury every day. Of course, mercury, is a toxic metal. And for most of us, mercury is destructive to the system. It's one of the most destructive elements in our system. They took a certain concoction of mercury made up in a certain way every day. That's what these men told them, that it was done that way. Be that as it may, that I've seen. And I know it's not a matter of believing and not believing, it's just what I was told. But I do know that it went back generationally, at least 4 generations. They're there. They can be found. They're living, breathing people. They didn't look like Lost Horizon after they left Shangri-La. They didn't look like that. They didn't look like a day over 499. They talk about a mercurial